Hi, thanks for joining us for part two of this video. I'm Curtis Miles, and we've been walking through the MobileFirst platform, the IBM MobileFirst platform. And what I want, and so if you're joining us from part one, you've seen this picture, right? We just finished creating all of these things on the screen to be able to represent the different pieces of IBM MobileFirst. And so now we're ready to dive in and to see it in action. And so what I want to do is bring up my phone here. And so this is my phone. And I want to dive into this in the context of an example. And the example has to do with a doctor. So we are going to launch our community health app here. And we have an organization called Community Health, and we are going to log in. This is an app that a physician uses to be able to manage the list of patients that they're going to see every day as part of their practice, be able to look at information about the patients, and be able to do things essentially to complete the appointments that they've got on their schedule for the day. So I'm going to come into my app and I'm going to log in. We're going to log in as Dr. Davis with my super secure password. And as I sign into the app here, what I'm presented with is my list of patients. So these are all the appointments that I've got today. I can see who's coming up. I can see who is already in the office, how long they've been waiting for, what room they're in, and what their appointment time was, etc. So if we tap on Judy here at the beginning, and I can see information about Judy. I can see her reason for the appointment. It shows me that I have some actions available here. But you'll also notice that I have a green button up at the top that will track how long I'm actually spending with my patients versus doing paperwork. And so when I start to see Judy, I tap on Begin, and now it's capturing information here about my appointment duration, and it's just going to be able to give me some metrics and some interesting information that helps me understand how I'm doing as a physician, and maybe this is an important metric for me to track. So I can do that. I can tap on Judy, picture again to dive into the next level of detail about her health information here. I can see some basic details. We tap on visits. We can look at the visit history here for Judy and what she's come in to visit us about in the past. Tap on medications down at the bottom on this tab, and I can see the list of things that we have prescribed to Judy in the past and maybe the medication history. I can tap on tests. I can see the tests that we have scheduled, and in fact in this case we can see that there's a blood test at the top here that has been scheduled, but we haven't actually received the results of that yet. And so now maybe this is something that is actually important that we want to be notified of immediately when this test result becomes available. And so I can just, as Dr. Davis, slide this over. I can tap on subscribe to be able to now receive a push notification as soon as that test becomes available. And maybe there are other people that are actually interested in the test result. Maybe the gentleman who runs our diagnostics lab, he might be subscribing to different test results to see how quickly his team is turning out these results inside of the hospital. So just different things that you can do. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I just noticed on this visits page, it looks like there's some information here that can't be right. I mean, I don't think Judy came in 3 times today if those dates are all the same. So as Dr. Davis, what I can do is just go ahead and shake my phone. You couldn't see me do that, but I shook my phone. And in shaking my phone, it actually detects that I actually want to provide some feedback about the app. Now in this case, I want to report a bug because I saw that problem and that just wasn't right, and I want to make sure that we get that fixed. And so we can say, the dates, let me type this properly, the dates were wrong for the appointments. So I've just provided that kind of text, and that actually might be very confusing to somebody who's trying to fix the problem. If I just tell them, hey, you know what, the dates are really wrong for the appointments. So what dates are you talking about? There's lots of places we're showing dates in this app, and there's a lot of back and forth conversation that has to happen because my description might not have been very clear. So what I can do here is I can tap and I can say what the actions are that I performed. So I opened the app, and now I went to patient details. So maybe still not that descriptive, right? This might still be misunderstood. So because of that, what I can do actually down at the bottom, you notice when I shook my phone, it took a picture of my screen. And so here's my screen. So isn't it just so much easier if I can just say, these are the dates that I'm talking about. Notice how they're all the same, right? This is this, and I'm just drawing with my finger on the screen to make this point, right? Very easy to be able to highlight exactly what the problem is very quickly. Don't make me describe it. I've got busy things to do. I'm seeing patients. Let me just provide this email or this feedback very quickly. Now, of course, I probably want to block out some sensitive information here. So I tap down at the bottom on my little drop and I kind of just obfuscate this little piece of information here about who the actual patient is, because this is sensitive information. We don't need this included in any of the report. It's immaterial. So I block that out. Tap on my check mark, tap send in the top right hand corner. Actually, before I do that, if there's more things that I want to be able to capture, I can add that to the record. I can take additional pictures. I can even record a video, right? So maybe the problem in the app is with me moving between pages. I'm finding it's really slow, or it's just not working properly. I can record a video of exactly the problem I'm having, include that with this report, and then go ahead and tap send. And I have just sent in that feedback now to whoever is fixing it. I don't know who I would have had to talk to otherwise, but I've just had the ability to kind of make that kind of feedback from the context of my mobile app without having to worry about that. Okay, so we come back here. We've looked at the information for Judy, and now we're ready to take some action based on what we've done in the diagnostics in this appointment. And so maybe we actually want to prescribe Judy some more medication. And so in our action section, I can tap on actions. I can tap on meds. And as I do that, it brings up a window here that is asking me a secret question. And now this is a question that only I know, that I have arranged in advance, right, to be part of this app. And this could be any mechanism. But what's happening here is when I logged into the app, I logged in with my username and password, and that granted me a certain level of security, right, of authenticity or of authentication to be able to do things like look at my patient list, etc. But as soon as I want to do something like prescribe medication, it's requiring me to have an additional level of authentication, to go through another security check to make sure that I've actually got the access required to be able to do this. So you can think about a situation where I'm in my doctor's office and I am putting my phone down and my secretary calls me and I'm coming out and I'm dealing with something. What I don't want is my patient to be able to accidentally, and if I've accidentally left my phone, for them to be able to get on my phone, prescribe some medications, or do something that would be very damaging. So second level of authentication, we call that step-up authentication here. And let me just answer this question here, put in my name, tap on submit. And as soon as I do that, I can see that that medication was added, right? And that'll be added onto my medication list here. And so that's great. Now let's pretend that our appointment is finished. Okay, so I can be finished with Judy. I tap on finished. The appointment is complete. And maybe now I'm going to go down and I'm going to grab a bite to eat from our cafeteria. Now the cafeteria is actually in the basement of the building. I have no Wi-Fi down there, no signal whatsoever. And just to simulate that, I'm going to come in and put this into airplane mode. Okay, so I now have no signal, and I'm eating my lunch, and maybe something occurs to me. Maybe it occurs to me that, hey, there's something I should actually take a note on Judy's file. And so I can tap here on notes down at the bottom. And as I do that, and I can say, remember to, and whatever it is, and to capture that note. And I can save that note. And now I'm offline, right? So I have just stored that information locally on my device. And I'm in the cafeteria. And so now let's pretend that I'm coming back upstairs. I can first of all I can see that Judy's appointment has been finished. I can look at who's coming up next after lunch, and let me just come back online here. And so now that I'm back online, I continue working and I can see who's coming up next, and I can move on to my next appointment. And then at the end of the day, I go ahead and log out, having completed a good day's work. Okay, so that's our story, kind of walking through it, and we saw kind of Dr. Davis using this app. So now what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to walk through that again, but this time looking at some of the capabilities that were happening, or the things that were happening behind the scenes that we weren't really aware of, right, that we're not really, weren't considering. So the first thing is this obvious one, right, is the fact that we logged in, right? So from a security perspective, this is our first look at what it means to do security. Now in this case, Dr. Davis was using a username and password, but he certainly could have been using biometrics with his fingerprint on iOS, maybe a different mechanism on different types of devices if they don't have fingerprint readers, etc. But he's got this notion of security that is baked in. MobileFirst makes this very simple to be able to create. So we have a handshake mechanism that happens between the mobile device and the backend server, and makes it very easy to develop reusable methods of authentication that you can take across all of your different apps and very easily go ahead and implement those as part of that security conversation. Okay, so Dr. Davis logged in, right? He looked at his patient list. He saw this list. Now, this is patient information. So this is not just, random data that is meaningless. This is very significant, very important information to keep private. And so when Dr. Davis is looking at this on his device, and we saw he had the ability to continue to see this even when he was offline, it's important that this information be stored locally on the device so he can work and he can make that comment when he was in the cafeteria like we saw. But this information has to be encrypted, right? This information has to be unbreakable by the person who finds Dr. Davis's iPhone in the taxi cab, who roots it or jailbreaks the phone, who gets at that information and pulls it out. Or, you think about when he was in the cafeteria, if he had just actually left his phone on the table, walked away, people know that he's a doctor, he's got the white coat on, they're looking for this, they're walking by, they just swipe the phone because they know how sensitive and how valuable this personal information is for these patients. So having that lockdown so that even when somebody breaks into the phone, they still can't access it is absolutely critical in this case. And so we see that kind of in play behind the scenes here. And then Dr. Davis came and he was starting to track some information here about how long he was going to be spending with Judy. He was tracking the timing of his appointment, and all of that is going to filter into analytics, right? So if we look back at our picture, we'll see that coming into our world of mobile analytics in a minute, where we're able to not just capture what people are doing on the phone and the performance and how long it's taking to make the calls into the server side to get the patient records, etc., but even down to information that's relevant for us to decide if our mobile strategy is being achieved by our mobile apps, right? Because our mobile strategy typically is not a matter of whether or not people are using our apps. We actually want them to be perhaps changing the way that they work or becoming more efficient, and we need to capture metrics that report on the success of our mobile strategy, not just on our mobile app usage. Okay, so we're going to see that. The other thing you'll remember from this screen is when Dr. Davis prescribed those medications and we popped up that second step of authentication, that was really another level of protection on the back-end service that is calling one of our adapters here for prescribing medication, a second level of authentication that was being required before that adapter call could go through. And so we make that very efficient, right? So in this case, from a mobile app, we were calling in to try to prescribe the medication. MobileFirst was challenging us back to say, hey, this one is protected with an extra level that you don't have yet. Here's the steps you need to go through to satisfy that. In our case, it was answering in the secret question. We provide the answer, and then MobileFirst will allow that original request to now return with the results that were expected, right? So from a mobile app development perspective, you don't have to keep recalling to see, hey, do I have the request? Do I have this, the access now? Do I have it now? We make it super simple to be able to call those protected resources, satisfy the requirements that they have from a security perspective, and then allow the original call to go through to get the results back. So we saw that in action. We also saw taking the note, right, where he took the note and that was available offline, and he had that capability. Then we dive into Judy's details, and he was tapping around on the different buttons at the bottom, right, the different tabs, and we'll see how we can actually even collect information like that in our mobile analytics to get a sense for which of these tabs is most relevant and most critical. Certainly we reported a bug, right, as Dr. Davis, as he found these missing dates, and that was easy for him to do. And then he looked at the tests, and he was able to subscribe for a push notification for when these test results become available, right? So there's actually quite a bit that was happening behind the scenes here in terms of Dr. Davis's use of this particular mobile app. But now what I want to do is actually take it to the next level and dive into the behind the scenes even more to show you what it looks like from an operations perspective right here in the operations console to be able to manage this application. And so for that, I'm going to come over into our operations console. So here we are in our operations console, and I'm going to log in. And in that operations console, so this is my window into my mobile app world, right? This is where I see all the different mobile apps that I've got deployed. You can see in this case I've got 3 different apps deployed. This is where I have visibility into all the adapters, so those back-end services that I'm exposing for use across these different mobile applications, and I can just configure and manage my mobile environment. So here's my community health app. So I tap on it, I can see that I've got 3 versions across 2 operating systems. All visible right here for me in one stop, one place to come and look. I was on the iOS version, so here's our iOS version. And what we can see is that we have some capabilities to be able to manage the individual app. So you'll notice first and foremost we have the status. So the status right here is active. It can be active in notifying, or I can have access disabled. So think about the case where we've got lots of different versions of our mobile app because we've been releasing new versions regularly and we're kind of trying to keep up to the pace of demand of our customers who are asking for new features, and we're delivering them. In this case, there comes a time when I probably want to shut down an older version of my app, right? And so being able to do that gracefully can be challenging. With MobileFirst, what I can do is I just tap on Access Disabled. I have the ability to put in a new version of the app if I've got a link to an app store. Maybe this is an internal link or just a web page that people can go to be able to find out how to get the new version. I can put in a notification message. So this app version is no longer supported. And as I do that and hit Save, right, now any users of that mobile app, the next time that they log in, or actually the next time that their app tries to connect in and call home, actually let's bring our phone back up here. So if I launch the community banking app now, what you'll notice is I get this message. And so what you'll notice is that I get this message. And on this message, it's just telling me, it says access to the server is disabled. There's the message that I provided. I have the button to be able to follow. Now I didn't put in a real link here, so it's not going to go anywhere. But I can very easily see that this application needs to be upgraded. And from a management perspective behind the scenes, I now have control to help my customers always be on the latest version, or at least a later version, right? So maybe I don't need them to be on the latest and greatest, but I just need them not to be on the one that was like 6 months old because I can't afford to support that one any longer, right? So I can go ahead and do that, and I can manage that very easily from here. Maybe I just want to provide them with a message but not actually disable their access to this app. I can do that from the back end here with just the active and notifying, and that maybe this is just informing them of an upcoming service window that's happening where the app is going to be unavailable at 2 a.m. this Sunday. So just in case they're looking to use it. Okay, so that's kind of a glimpse into some of the management capabilities that are available here. Of course, I have the ability to publish updates, and if my mobile application is a Cordova-based application, I can publish those updates directly through here, have them automatically get pushed out to mobile devices so that I don't have to worry about keeping those mobile devices up to date. I just push out my updates, users will automatically get those and be able to take advantage of the new functionality that I'm releasing. In the authenticity category, actually, let's just put that back and save it. In the authenticity category, this is where we can turn on that ability to make sure that the only apps that are connecting into my back-end services, into these adapters that we've exposed, are the authentic version of the app that we have put out there and made available to our customers. So this is designed to prevent attacks, such as somebody taking our app from Google Play, reverse engineering it, injecting malware, or injecting adware, right? This is a very common pattern where you take a popular app, you reverse engineer it, you inject your own adware, you put it back out onto an app store in some way, or you get it onto people's devices, and then hackers start collecting revenue from the ads that they're seeing on your app. So what we ensure is that only the authentic version of the app that hasn't been tampered with is able to connect into your backend system, and you can set that all up from here. On the security perspective, you remember when we as Dr. Davis tried to prescribe some medications, we got that challenge, that extra security challenge. And here's where that's set up. So you'll notice that I have two scopes. I have an access restricted and an access restricted level 2. And they're protected by something that we call security checks. So my basic security check was my user login. So that's where Dr. Davis provided his username and his password, and that got him access to a bunch of the different services. But then when it came into prescribing the medications, we used the step-up security check, which is what brought that window up to ask us that secret question, right? So we can have these multiple levels that we're configuring depending on the nature of the service that we're trying to call and how secure it needs to be. On logging, right? So think about a case where you've just released a version of your app out there into the world, and you're starting to see some negative feedback come back into the App Store, and people are talking about your app crashing, and you're thinking, what is going on here? My app is crashing. What do I do? How do I stop this? How do I fix it before my review in the App Store just goes completely south, and I have a 2-star rating that's impossible to come back from? So log filters give me the ability to remotely turn on logging on client devices to start to collect information that I need to be able to fix the problem quickly and to be able to get a fix out there before it starts impacting my brand. right? So with the log filter, I can create individual log filters for specific packages, right? I can say, I know the problems in this area. I'm just going to collect some additional information in this area. I can pick the details of the logs that I want to start to collect. And as I do that, automatically I'll start to see those logs show up into my analytics console. We'll see that in a minute. And I get the information that I can use to be able to fix the problem if I'm the developer, send it off to the developers to fix the problem quickly so we can nip it in the bud and we can just avoid the negative implications of having an app crashing out there in the App Store. So having that remote control of log is important. And so if we dive into the adapters here, so again, these are those back-end services that we're exposing for use on our mobile channel. And you'll notice that that I have my appointments adapter. So if I view my appointments adapter in this case, I have the ability, and I haven't used that here, but I have the ability to configure the properties of this service. So maybe if I've got different environments across my dev and my test and my pre-production and my production, and I want to be able to point to a different database in each case, and I don't want to certainly bake that into the code itself. I want to have that dynamically configurable. All of that is available for my management and maintenance here directly on the operations console, so I can tweak some of those settings and knobs and dials and things as appropriate. If I look into resources, here is my appointments, right? So this is, I can see the different services that this adapter is exposing. For example, getting my appointments or updating my list of appointments. And I can view these as Swagger. And so as I do this, I can see the API endpoints that are available for me to call. And I can tap on this, and let's go ahead and try it out directly from this environment. Now you'll see what happened here. I got my 401 response because I am not authenticated, right? This is a secure service, so I can only get this once I've authenticated. So if I come over here on the right-hand side, I turn on my authentication, and you'll notice that it brings me up the ability to select different OAuth 2.0 scopes. So again, this is back to that multi-level security that we have the capability of implementing. Now in this case, I'm just trying to get my list of appointments, which remember was just my username and login. So I actually only need to check my first scope, and I authorize that from a testing perspective here, and I try it out, and lo and behold, here's all that information that we expected to see coming back from the report. So it makes it super simple to be able to test my adapters, to make sure that my security model is working as I expect it to work, and seeing that all from this one environment. Okay, so we've seen lots of things here, lots of information about what we can manage and maintain across all the different apps and the versions of those apps and the different platforms and all of our back-end services we can configure here on our dashboard. But now what I want to do is dive into the analytics. So if I tap on Analytics Console, this brings me over into the companion console that shows me information about how my app is working. Now, in this case, my first page looks pretty blank, and it looks pretty blank because we're showing crashes as our first metric here. And I wrote this app, and I don't write apps that crash, so that's why my page is blank. Hopefully all of your first pages will be blank too as you're rolling out your mobile apps. But the idea is that you can see the information directly on this dashboard about the behavior and the performance of your application if it's crashing. And if it's crashing, you get stack trace information that you can immediately send to your development teams, or you can, as a developer, make sure that you're fixing the problem, rolling out the updates before you have any negative impact as a result of those crashes. You can set alerts to say, once you're seeing certain things happening, maybe showing up in the logs, a certain number over a certain threshold in a period of time, or it's crashing more than 10 times per minute, or whatever your metric is, have that automatically notify you so that you don't have to have somebody that's kind of sitting here staring at these charts all day long, right? This proactive notification that's happening in the background, letting you know that there's a situation that requires your attention from within here. So you can set up these alerts very simply in the alert management. Go ahead and create alert, provide the message that you actually want to reply to, a bunch of different types of things that you can capture and watch for in order to create those alerts. If we dive into apps, what we see here is that we have a number of devices, we have a number of sessions, we have how many active users at any given time that we've got. So it's just me using my little app here, which is why you can see the numbers aren't super high. You can see the breakdown of app sessions over days, understanding what the usage patterns are across device types, operating systems, all of that stuff that you would expect to give you the context of how things are working inside of your mobile environment and how your mobile application is being used in this way. Again, visibility into crashes, Here is where you can actually go and look at those client-side logs. So you remember I talked about the ability to turn on remote logging from the operations console to be able to bring that information and make it visible and available for people to be able to collect it so that they can fix problems. So I can put in whatever requirements I want to here in terms of how to filter the logs, and this is where I can come to see all the information that I need to be able to find and fix problems. In addition, I can see all the different types of devices, right, that are connecting into me, and I have a list of those, and I can manage that all from here as well. The second last category actually of information that we're capturing here is all about performance in terms of communication between the device and the back end. And now the fact that I've got these services implemented as adapters gives me a great deal of visibility, not just into how long it's taking for my mobile application for the back end to respond to my requests for my mobile application, because I can certainly see my server processing time here. But I can even break it down into how much of that time is spent actually running the code on the back end versus how much of the time is spent in the network request itself, right? So is it just that I'm on a slow network, or is it actually that I actually have a performance problem behind the scenes in terms of these services that we're implementing for use on our mobile channel? So great visibility because we've got an end-to-end monitoring solution, an analytics solution here with mobile. We can understand what's happening on the device. We can understand all the way down into what's happening on the back end and everything in between. See what servers this is distributing to. I can see the individual services that are being called, the adapters that are being called, which adapters are being called more frequently than others, and I can see that breakdown to some great detail. Access information about push notifications, so how many push notifications I'm sending across different device types. I have the ability to search my server logs, etc. So lots of great content. And then lastly, there's that category of information that falls outside of just the stuff that can automatically be collected because it's very specific. So in our case, you remember we talked about a couple things. We wanted to see what our average appointment time was for how long it was taking or how long our doctors were actually spending with patients. And we were also collecting information here, if you remember the page about the patient details, about which of those tabs on the patient details page doctors were going to most frequently. And so we're capturing some analytics about that. And so we can actually see that the medications page is by far and away actually not that much, about a third of the time being used, and we can see the breakdown in terms of how often those pages are being visited by the physicians as they're using our apps to give us an insight into what the areas might be to do some improvements on in the future. I can see how many appointments I've completed, the average appointment duration. I can see the breakdown of how I'm moving between pages on my mobile application to understand how people are using the app and what their usage patterns are. And all of this kind of falls into this category of custom analytics. And so I can very easily create custom charts to show me information that's relevant to the use cases that I have built my mobile application to be able to support. And so that I'm making sure that we're actually being successful with the things that we show. Okay, so maybe we'll just leave it there. So we've seen an end-to-end view of things happening here, right? We looked at this entire picture. We saw the way that we could create our mobile application that had all the security that we needed, connected into the back-end adapters. We looked at the operations console for how we can manage the app, and we just scratched the surface of what's in that operations console. We didn't talk about the ability even for this operations person to be able to send push notifications directly from the console and look at subscriptions and things like that. We'll do that later. We looked at the mobile analytics capability to see all the vast amounts of information that are collected and that we now have at our fingertips to ensure that our mobile strategy is successful. And of course, all of this is made possible by MobileFirst Foundation, which is super simple for your development teams to use to include into the mobile apps to give you all of these benefits. Okay, thank you.